Another week passes and here we are in the third week of August already. Now I want to tell you a story, as of course I do. It should have been an ordinary Wednesday evening back in July. But for me and many more people like me, it was not to be an ordinary Wednesday evening. No barbecue out in the evening sunshine, no relaxed evening with the wife. Instead it was, tense. My emotions were absolutely up and then down. Until finally there was absolute rejoicing. The Baggies were going back up into the Premiership. All was well with the world. I went and I got out my old West Brom mug to celebrate. And of course on my West Brom mug, the Baggies mug, it actually says, if you read it, "The Lord's my shepherd." Which reminded me that my football team began from Christian roots, and it had a set scripture and a set hymn, which was of course the 23rd Psalm, which most of the working class people who were supporters of the Baggies back then in Victoria's reign actually would have known in their daily lives. They'd know every word, they'd be singing it out loud, and of course if they won, as indeed they did back then, they'd be celebrating by singing "The Lord's my shepherd" with full voice and full meaning. Well, most people today have heard of the 23rd Psalm, and even if they can't quote it quite correctly, they'll often choose it for their funerals or the funeral of a relative. It's actually a relationship poem. It's been called the sweetest psalm ever written. It has also been called the psalm that calms the soul. So pause and refresh yourself with the words of Scripture if you need to now. The psalm is so familiar that many of us can actually repeat it off by heart. But it's set in the world of sheep and shepherds, a world which, even with our shepherds and sheep today, if we go on our stay at a home holiday in Wales or up in the north, down in Cornwall, we'll see many sheep in the fields. It actually speaks of the richness of relationship. And to us it speaks of the richness of relationship that we've accepted Jesus as our own Good Shepherd. Now, you may not be aware that the Bible actually refers to us as sheep over 200 times. However, it's not necessarily meant as a compliment to you and me, because sheep, let's say, are smelly creatures, stubborn creatures, prone to wander and think the grass is a bit greener on the other side. So let's look at the words a bit more for today, for this week. David, the human author, had been a shepherd in his youth. However, he chooses to write it from the perspective of the sheep, us, grazing and gazing at their caring shepherd, reassured that he's there, the shepherd's there with them, a good shepherd taking good care of them. And the psalm moves us from the heights of victory to the deepest, darkest valleys. spans, if you like, all of life's emotions, from the womb to the tomb. But please remember this. If you want the calm of this psalm, you must actually become one of the shepherd's sheep. Accept him as your shepherd, and you accept being one of his flock. Put your hands, therefore, in the hands of the shepherd. Put your life into his hands, the one who provides, the one who protects, and the one who preserves. The shepherd provides. Relationship. God provides for us through this relationship he has created for us with his Son. Look at the actual first phrase of verse 1. The Lord. This is the title Yahweh. It's the first name revealed to Moses in Exodus 3. I am who I am. Ordinary Israelites had considered this name too holy to be spoken by ordinary human lips. It was so revered that it was only pronounced once a year, actually, on the Day of Atonement, and then only by the high priest in the most holiest place of the temple. David says, the great I am is my shepherd. The word is, meaning the Lord, Creator God, is David's shepherd right at that very moment. And my shows how personal God is to him. David uses my and me and I 17 times in this psalm. That close-knit relationship. He is mine, he is powerful, but he is personal. He's far away and yet he's right here, my friend, right with me. He's majestic, but he's mine. Aren't you and I also glad that the sovereign Creator, the Lord, has stooped to be our shepherd, made himself actually visible to us in Jesus, so that we can have that personal human relationship even with our Creator. When you have that relationship, it can be replenished. I shall not want. Left to themselves, sheep lack everything, but with a good shepherd, they have everything they need. He moves them on to new pastures. He makes sure they have the water. Max Lucado writes of our discontent as the prison of our want. But I shall not want. Not if I have that relationship with my Lord. If I give him that place in my life. And he will give me rest. He makes me lie down in these green pastures. Notice, he makes me lie down. Sometimes the shepherd has to institute forced rest periods for a sheep by folding its legs in such a way that it would become paralyzed for a while, and therefore had to lie down and get much needed rest. A sheep cannot properly digest its food unless they lie down. And of course, in these sandy regions, at one of these occasions, to actually move from one green pasture to another meant they would gorge themselves when they were there, and they had to be made to lie down and rest. I'm reminded of Psalm 4, in peace I will lie down to sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. Parents have had more time with their children, and we've all been challenged to think, care for, and contact each other, even if distance more. Philip Keller, one of my favourite writers, points out the best way to get a flock to chill out was to actually make sure a couple of conditions are met. Freedom from fear and freedom from famine. The shepherd makes sure they're in green pastures, grassy meadows, where they can feed among the rich, sweet grass and then chew their cud while lying down on those carpeted pastures. Jesus tells us he is our bread of life. And after being fully fed, David tells us he leads me beside quiet waters. After we know the food, then we are refreshed and can know his righteousness. After dusting us off, he moves us in the right direction, leads us in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. God longs to lead us along those right paths. And I'm sure that's where he's trying to lead us now, along the right paths for our future. We hear this talk of all this new norm, but we have to listen to the shepherd to appreciate what that new norm can be for us, for the church, for the assets we have and how we use them, or lose them, so that he might do something else, a new opportunity. God longs to lead us into new pathways and to new pastures. When we come to verse 4, we see a couple of changes. In verses 1 to 3, the sheep are in the sunshine. In verse 4, they're in the shadows. God not only provides for us, he protects us through these dark seasons of life, leads us through the pleasant glens and the dark gorges too. Notice the change. In the first half, David is extolling the virtues of the shepherd, using he and his in reference to Yahweh. And when we come to the second half, he speaks to the shepherd more personally. You are with me. Your rod, your staff, you prepare, you anoint. When times were rough, God became more real to David. We've experienced that ourselves. I'm sure you have, like me. And God protects us. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. He gives us a peace within these times as we go through the gorges, through the darkness. We walk through the valley. We don't stay there, but we must keep walking along the right pathways with the shepherd, the good shepherd, that we may come out again into the brightness, through the gloom into the glory, if you like, from the old into the new, if you like. Jesus says, I am the light of this world, the light of your world. He protects us throughout by his presence. I will never leave you or forsake you, he tells us in Hebrews 13. David continues, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. The rod was used to protect the sheep. The staff was a slender pole with a little crook on the end, like bishops have. It could be hooked around the leg of a sheep to pull it away from harm. It was also utilized to lift sheep out of crevices when they'd fallen. The rod was tough. The staff was tender. And so the third way the shepherd protects is by preparation. You prepare before me in the presence of mine enemies. This reminds me of the young boy who was messing around during dinner time. After being warned several times, his parents finally told him he had to eat by himself at a tiny table in the corner. When he sat down, his dad reminded him to pray before he ate any food. So he closed his eyes and he prayed. Bless this food that I eat in the presence of my enemies. The word enemy can mean what distresses, troubles, threatens, oppresses, frightens us. We're at war now with an invisible virus, I know. It's stalking us and it's causing so many problems and brings along with it so much fear. I'm praying God will bring revival to our lives, to our churches, our country, the world, that we will actually see the opportunity in it. For in every disaster, there is opportunity with the shepherd. The fourth way the shepherd protects us is through prevention. You anoint my head with oil. In that day, oil was also a sign of rejoicing. So to be anointed with it was to be splashed with joy. If you like, a bit like the West Brom players were splashing champagne everywhere, except for four. Four of the lads immediately knew, when they knew they'd managed to get promotion, got down on their knees and gave thanks to God. Oh yes, I'm sorry to say that a few fans and indeed the press and indeed Facebook, who took one of the photographs down as unsuitable, didn't like that celebration. But many of us did. They gave thanks for God's presence in their life, for the gifts of God that had allowed them to be part of that, the talents they'd been able to use to His glory as well as to ours. The oil repels insects, prevents conflict, heals wounds. He deals with our problems by protecting us from those things that can wipe us out. I gave thanks for those four lads and reminded, I pray, all the fans where our team came from, and maybe why they too actually sing "The Lord's my shepherd." He helps us to have harmony with each other. He comforts and heals us when we're beat up. If you want the calm of this psalm, you have to become one of the shepherd's sheep. Our shepherd provides and he protects. He also preserves us. My cup overflows. And yes, it did. It overflowed with joy. But remember, when he's with you, surely goodness and mercy will follow you all the days of your life. Surely is an emphatic expression, and it can only be translated, if you like, into modern parlance as yes indeed. Spurgeon refers to goodness as mercy as two guardian angels, always at my beck and call. always at my back and beck, is how he puts it. And so I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Go to it, lads. Whatever happens, know who is your shepherd, and sing it loud and proud, lads and lasses alike. And may the Lord be with us and stay with us, you and me, always. God bless.